The mystery of being. Close your eyes and notice something simple. Right now, there is something it is like to be you. Not your thoughts or the sounds around you, but the bare fact of experiencing itself. This is what philosophers call consciousness, and it remains one of the deepest mysteries in human inquiry. Picture a scientist examining your brain with advanced technology. They can trace every neuron, map every electrical impulse, catalog every chemical dancing between cells. They can show you exactly which regions activate when you see red, when you hear music, when you remember someone you love. But here's what remains unexplained. How does all that physical activity give rise to the felt quality of experience? How does matter transform into meaning? When you see red, scientists can explain the wavelengths entering your eye, the signals traveling to your visual cortex, the patterns of neural activation. But they cannot explain why there is something it is like to see red, why crimson evokes the feeling it does. Philosopher David Chalmers called this the hard problem of consciousness, not because it's difficult to solve, but because it may represent a fundamental feature of reality itself, the mysterious way subjective experience arises from objective processes. Think about pain. Science can map the nerves that carry pain signals, identify the brain regions that process them, measure the intensity through biological markers. But the actual hurt, the quality of suffering, the thing that makes pain painful, that remains in a different category entirely. Some believe that as we learn more about the brain, this gap will close. Others suggest consciousness might be as fundamental to the universe as matter or energy. But perhaps the most profound response is simply to acknowledge the mystery. As you settle into rest tonight, notice the miracle you're living inside. Somehow, impossibly, you are aware, conscious, experiencing. The most ordinary fact about your existence is also the most extraordinary. You don't need to explain it tonight. Just let yourself rest in the quiet wonder that you are here, aware, experiencing this moment. And as your awareness softens and blurs, you're experiencing the mystery itself, consciousness preparing to dissolve into sleep. The thought experiment of inner life. Imagine walking past someone on the street. They smile, wave, perhaps say hello. They laugh at jokes, cry at sad movies, complain about traffic. In every observable way, they behave exactly as you do. But here's a question philosophers have pondered. What if, behind those eyes, there was nothing? What if they possessed no inner experience whatsoever, just pure behavior responding to stimuli? This is the philosophical zombie, not a horror creature, but a thought experiment about consciousness. A being identical to you physically, yet completely lacking that mysterious inner light of awareness. The zombie thought experiment isn't meant to suggest such beings exist. Rather, it's a way of pointing at something profound. Subjective experience cannot be observed from the outside. You cannot prove you're conscious to anyone else. They can only infer it from your behavior. Everything you've ever known about another person's inner life comes through external signs. You see someone cry and infer sadness. You hear laughter and infer joy. But you never directly experience what it's like to be them. This creates a curious asymmetry. You know with absolute certainty that you are conscious. It's the most undeniable fact of your existence. But everyone else's consciousness remains an inference. A reasonable one, a compassionate one, but still not quite direct knowledge. Yet somehow, we recognize each other as fellow conscious beings. Perhaps through empathy, that mysterious ability to resonate with another's emotional state. Perhaps through the way someone's eyes truly see you and you know somehow that there's someone home behind those eyes. The philosophical zombie helps us appreciate something we usually take for granted. The presence of felt experience is not the same as physical structure or behavior. The inner dimension, what it's actually like to be someone, remains beautifully resistant to third-person observation. But perhaps the deepest lesson isn't about zombies at all. It's about the preciousness of inner experience. The fact that you are not an empty shell going through motions, that there is something it is like to be you. As you prepare for sleep tonight, rest in the certainty of your own consciousness. You are not empty form. You are lived presence, felt experience, subjective awareness. Behind your eyes, the lights are on. Let yourself trust in the reality of your own experience. No proof needed, just the simple, undeniable fact. You are here, you are aware, and that awareness is enough. Why experience has texture? Picture holding a ripe strawberry. Before you even taste it, your mind already knows something. The particular way red looks. Not the wavelength of light, not the neural firing pattern, but the actual redness itself. This is what philosophers call qualia, the felt qualities of conscious experience. The redness of red, the painfulness of pain, the way coffee tastes, the way Mozart sounds, the way velvet feels. These experiential textures cannot be fully captured by physical descriptions alone. Consider someone who has been blind from birth. You can explain that red light has a wavelength of 650 nanometers. You can describe how it activates specific cone cells, how it triggers particular neural pathways. You can tell them red is often associated with warmth, passion, danger. But have you truly conveyed what it's like to see red? Philosopher Frank Jackson illustrated this with Mary, a scientist who knows everything physical about color, but has lived her entire life in a black and white room. When Mary finally sees red for the first time, does she learn something new? Most of us intuitively feel that yes, she does. She learns what red is like. Not just facts about red, but the experience of red itself. This suggests subjective experience contains something that cannot be reduced to physical information alone. The puzzle deepens with inverted spectra. Imagine that when you look at the sky, you experience what I experience looking at grass. We'd both call the sky blue because we've learned to attach that word to it. But our private, inner experiences would be inverted. How would we ever know? Or consider pain. Neuroscience can identify nerves firing, measure brain activity, even predict pain intensity. But none of this captures the hurt itself, that awful, distinctive feeling. You cannot describe pain to someone who has never felt it. Some philosophers argue that qualia are the fundamental barrier to a purely physical explanation of consciousness. Others suggest qualia are simply what physical processes feel like from the inside. But perhaps what matters most isn't solving this puzzle. It's recognizing the richness of your inner life. Every moment of your experience has texture, quality, and distinctive character. The world doesn't just register, it feels like something. As you drift towards sleep, notice the qualia of this moment. The weight of your head on the pillow, the quality of darkness or dim light, the particular texture of tiredness settling into your limbs. You don't need to explain why experience has texture. You only need to notice that it does. And as consciousness softens into sleep, even these textures will transform, becoming the strange, vivid qualia of dreams. How the mind creates unity. Imagine this moment as your brain experiences it. In one region, neurons process vision. In another, different cells decode sounds. Somewhere else, touch sensations register. In yet another location, your brain processes the meaning of these words. Your brain is not one thing but a parliament of specialized regions, each handling different aspects of experience. Vision alone involves dozens of distinct areas, some for color, some for motion, some for faces. Sound, smell, touch, each has its own dedicated neural real estate. Yet somehow you don't experience fragmentation. You don't hear sounds in one consciousness, see colors in another. Instead, you experience everything as a unified whole, one seamless stream of awareness. This is the binding problem. How does the brain create a unified field of consciousness from distributed neural events? Consider watching a bird fly past. You see its color processed in one brain region. You see its motion processed elsewhere. You see its shape, yet another region. You recognize it as a bird, different area. All these separate processing streams somehow become one unified experience, a bird flying past. The mystery deepens with timing. Different aspects of perception take different amounts of time to process, yet you don't experience sight and sound as happening at slightly different times. Your brain creates the illusion of simultaneity. But perhaps the deepest aspect of the binding problem is about the unity of the self. How do memories from years ago, sensations in this moment, plans for tomorrow, emotions, thoughts, and the sense of being you, all come together as one continuous experiencer? You don't feel like a committee. You feel like one person experiencing one moment. Yet neuroscience reveals that this unity is constructed, moment by moment, from countless separate processes. When someone suffers brain damage, this unity can fragment. Split-brain patients can sometimes behave as if they have two separate streams of consciousness. These cases reveal that unity isn't automatic. It's achieved through active neural coordination. As you settle into rest tonight, notice the quiet miracle of unified experience. Sounds, sensations, thoughts, feelings, all arising as one stream. You don't have to create this unity. It emerges naturally, effortlessly. And as you drift towards sleep, this unity will gently dissolve. Thought will separate from perception. Time will become fluid. The boundary between self and world will soften. The binding that creates your waking experience will loosen, allowing consciousness to fragment into dreams. Let that dissolution begin now. Let the edges soften. Rest in the paradox that your unified self is really a multiplicity, and that multiplicity can rest now together as one. The question of other minds. Imagine looking into the eyes of someone you love. In that gaze, you sense something, not just recognition but presence. The feeling that someone is home behind those eyes. But here's a question philosophers have wrestled with. How do you actually know there's consciousness there? How can you be certain that other minds exist at all? This isn't meant to make you doubt the people in your life. Rather, it's an invitation to notice something remarkable. You have direct access to exactly one consciousness in the universe, your own. Everything else comes to you indirectly, through external signs. You see someone cry and infer sadness. You hear laughter and infer joy. You watch someone recoil from a flame and infer they felt pain. But you never actually experience their sadness, their joy, their pain. The most certain knowledge you possess, that you are conscious, cannot be extended with the same certainty to anyone else. Your knowledge of other minds is different in kind from your knowledge of your own. Some philosophers suggest we know other minds through analogy. Your behavior is similar to mine. Your body is similar to mine. Therefore, by analogy, you probably have experiences similar to mine. But analogy isn't proof. The problem becomes even more challenging with beings very different from us. Does an octopus experience consciousness? A bee? A tree? Where does consciousness begin and end? Yet despite this philosophical uncertainty, something remarkable happens in human interaction. When you truly connect with another person, really see them and feel seen by them, doubt vanishes. Not through logical proof, but through something deeper: empathy, recognition. Perhaps this is why loneliness hurts so much. Not just the absence of company, but the deeper feeling of not being truly seen, truly known, truly met by another consciousness. And perhaps this is why genuine connection feels so profound. When someone truly understands you, it's validating in a deep existential way. It confirms that you're not alone in consciousness. Each of us is an island of awareness, directly accessible only to itself. We can build bridges through language, through touch, through shared experience, but we can never fully cross over. As you drift towards sleep, consider the quiet faith you place in other minds every day. You trust that the people in your life have inner experiences like yours. This trust isn't based on proof. It's based on intuition, that consciousness recognizes consciousness. Let yourself rest in that trust tonight. You are not alone in experiencing the world. Countless other centers of consciousness exist alongside yours, each with their own inner universe, their own mystery of being. The experience of other species. Picture a dog lying in sunlight, eyes half closed, tail gently wagging. Does the warmth feel like something to the dog? Is there an inner experience of comfort, of contentment? Or is it all just biological response, neurons firing, hormones releasing, without any felt quality at all? This is the question of animal consciousness, and it reveals just how difficult it is to know where experience begins and ends. Most of us feel certain that mammals experience pain. When a dog yelps after stepping on something sharp, we don't think it's mere reflex. We believe there's something it's like to be that dog, experiencing hurt. But what about fish? Research shows they have pain receptors, they learn to avoid harmful stimuli, they show what looks like distress. Yet their brains are structured so differently from ours. Is their experience there, or just complex response without awareness? The uncertainty grows as we move further from our own biological architecture. Insects have tiny brains, yet they navigate complex environments, learn, remember. A bee can recognize human faces, communicate dancing, make decisions. Does it feel anything? Is there something it's like to be a bee? And what about plants? They respond to their environment, communicate through chemical signals, can even seem to remember past events. But without a nervous system, without anything resembling a brain, could there be any experience at all? We tend to assume consciousness correlates with nervous system complexity. The more neurons, the more interconnected the brain, the more likely experience exists. But this is assumption, not proof. Perhaps consciousness isn't all or nothing. Maybe it exists on a spectrum, rich and vivid in humans, simpler in animals, very dim in insects, nearly absent in plants. Or perhaps it's more distributed than we imagine, existing wherever information is processed in certain ways. The question matters deeply for ethics. If animals can suffer, we have obligations toward them. If fish feel pain, industrial fishing becomes a moral concern. If insects have even the smallest spark of experience, we navigate a world filled with countless tiny minds. Yet we may never know for certain. We can only watch behavior, measure brain activity, make our best inferences. The inner experience of another species, even another person, remains ultimately beyond our direct knowledge. As you rest tonight, consider the mystery of consciousness distributed across millions of species. Perhaps you share this planet with countless other centers of experience, each radically different from yours, each with its own way of being aware. Let that possibility be gentle company as you drift. You might not be alone in experiencing the world. The universe might be far more alive with awareness than it appears. Measuring the unmeasurable. Imagine trying to measure consciousness the way you measure weight or temperature. Is this person more conscious than that person? Is consciousness a simple on-off switch, or does it come in degrees? This is the measurement problem of consciousness, and it reveals something profound about the nature of subjective experience. Consider sleep. Are you conscious during dreamless sleep? Most would say no, consciousness seems to vanish, only to return when you wake. But what about dreams themselves? You're unconscious to the outside world, yet there's vivid experience happening inside. Is that a different kind of consciousness? Or consider anesthesia. Doctors can monitor your brain activity during surgery, but they can't directly measure whether you're conscious. They rely on behavioral signs, movement, response to stimuli, but these are indirect indicators. The experience itself remains invisible. Some scientists have proposed theories to quantify consciousness. Integrated information theory suggests consciousness corresponds to how much integrated information a system processes. By this measure, A brain would be highly conscious, a thermostat barely conscious, a disconnected pile of neurons not conscious at all. But can subjective experience really be captured by numbers? Can the richness of your inner life be reduced to a measurement? There's something in the quality of consciousness, what it's like, that seems to resist quantification. The problem becomes urgent with artificial intelligence. If we create machines that behave intelligently, how will we know if they're conscious? We can measure their processing power, their complexity, their responses. But the presence or absence of inner experience, that remains mysterious. Perhaps consciousness isn't the kind of thing that can be measured. Perhaps it exists in a category that defies quantification, like beauty or meaning, or the feeling of being alive. As you drift toward sleep, notice how consciousness itself shifts and changes. Thoughts become less focused. Perceptions blur. The boundary between self and world softens. Your consciousness is transforming, but not in a way that any instrument could capture. Let yourself slip through the unmeasurable spaces. Let consciousness become less definite, less singular, less measurable. Rest in the mystery that you can't quantify yourself, and that's perfectly fine. How mind moves body. Imagine deciding to raise your hand. First comes the intention, a thought, a choice. Then your hand rises. Simple, ordinary happens 1,000 times a day. But here's what makes this mysterious. Your hand is made of atoms. Atoms follow the laws of physics. Every movement can be traced through chains of physical cause and effect. So where does your thought fit in? This is the problem of mental causation. If your brain is physical, and physical things follow physical laws, how does something as weightless as intention move something as concrete as your hand? Some philosophers suggested a troubling possibility. Perhaps thoughts don't actually cause anything. Perhaps they're just along for the ride, like a shadow cast by a walking person. The shadow moves, but it doesn't cause the walking. This idea unsettles us. You know your thoughts matter. You know your choices shape your life. Yet explaining how remains surprisingly difficult. The puzzle comes from how we think about mind and matter as separate categories. If they're truly different, one physical, one mental, how do they interact? How does the mental reach across some unbridgeable gap to push physical atoms around? But maybe the division between mental and physical isn't as clean as we imagine. Perhaps consciousness and matter aren't separate realms struggling to interact. Perhaps they're two ways of describing the same underlying reality. Think about water. From outside, you see liquid flowing, molecules in motion. From inside a wave, you'd experience the rush, the movement. The same reality, different perspectives. Perhaps mind and brain are like this. One reality, viewed from outside as neurons firing, experienced from inside as thoughts and feelings. As you rest tonight, notice how effortlessly intention becomes action. You decide to relax and your shoulders soften. You choose to let go and your breathing deepens. The how remains mysterious, but the fact remains. Somehow, beautifully, your mind moves your body into rest. Let that mystery be gentle tonight. You don't need to understand how thought becomes action. Just notice that it does, and let your intention to rest become the reality of sleep. If everything has experience, what if consciousness isn't rare, emerging only in complex brains? What if it's everywhere, ubiquitous, fundamental, woven into the fabric of reality itself? This is panpsychism, and while it sounds absurd at first, some philosophers take it quite seriously. The view suggests that even elementary particles possess some primitive form of experience. Not thoughts, not feelings, but perhaps the simplest possible inner quality, what it's like to be an electron, to be a photon. This might sound like mysticism, but it's motivated by a genuine puzzle. How does consciousness arise from non-conscious matter? How does subjective experience emerge from physical processes that have no experience at all? Panpsychism offers a radical solution. maybe experience doesn't emerge. Maybe it's been there all along in simpler forms. Combine simple experiencers in complex ways and you get richer, more sophisticated consciousness. Think of it like building blocks. Individual atoms aren't alive, but combine them in the right way and you get life. Similarly, maybe individual particles have minimal experience, but combine them in brain-like structures and you get human consciousness. The alternative seems equally strange. At some point in evolution, completely non-conscious matter suddenly became conscious. Where exactly did that transition happen? When did the lights turn on? The universe was doing its thing for billions of years, physics, chemistry, biology. And then suddenly, inexplicably, there was something it was like to be some organisms. Panpsychism dissolves this mystery by suggesting experience was always present, just in simpler forms. Your consciousness isn't created by your brain, it's what it feels like to be your brain, from the inside. Of course, this raises its own questions. If electrons have experience, why don't rocks? Why aren't tables conscious? Panpsychists respond that consciousness requires not just experiencers, but the right kind of integration. Your neurons are conscious because they're unified in the right way. A pile of sand isn't, even though each grain might have minimal experience. Perhaps the strangest implication. If panpsychism is true, you might be made of countless tiny experiencers. Your consciousness might be built from billions of simpler consciousnesses, the way a symphony is built from individual notes. As you drift towards sleep, consider the possibility that awareness is everywhere, in everything, just in different forms. That you're not separate from the universe, but a temporary pattern of experience arising within a universe already alive with awareness. Let that thought be strange comfort tonight. Perhaps you've never been separate from the cosmos. Perhaps you're just one way the universe experiences itself, preparing now to dissolve back into the vast, aware everything. When identity splits. Imagine a thought experiment. Your brain is carefully scanned, every neuron mapped, every connection recorded. Then, in two different locations, perfect copies of you are created. Both have your memories, your personality, your sense of being you. Now there are two people, both convinced they're you, both with equal claim to your identity, but they can't both be you, can they? This is the problem of fission, and it challenges everything we think we know about personal identity. The scenario seems impossible, but the logic is sound. If identity depends on psychological continuity, your memories, your character, your sense of self, then both copies would be you. They both remember your childhood, both love the same people, both think your thoughts. But two separate people can't both be identical to you. If one is you and the other isn't, which one? There's no way to choose. They're both equally continuous with your past self. Some philosophers suggest this reveals that identity doesn't work the way we think. Perhaps there's no deep fact about who you are that could be preserved or lost. Perhaps identity is more like a story we tell, useful for navigating life, but not pointing to any metaphysical truth. Others argue that you simply don't survive fission. Both copies are new people, related to you the way children are related to parents, continuous with you, but not identical to you. The puzzle gets worse if only one copy is made. Many people feel they would survive, that waking up in the new body with all their memories intact, they'd still be themselves. But if making one copy preserves identity, why doesn't making two? What's so special about the number one? This connects to the ancient ship of Theseus puzzle. If you replace every part of a ship over time, is it still the same ship? If you replace every cell in your body, are you still you? Perhaps identity is less about substance and more about pattern, continuity, narrative. As you prepare for sleep, consider that in a sense, you undergo a small death each night. The person who wakes tomorrow will have your memories, your body, your name, but will they be you? Or just someone very much like you, continuous with you, carrying your story forward? Perhaps identity isn't as solid as it feels. Perhaps you're more like a river than a stone, always flowing, always changing, never quite the same twice, yet somehow continuous. Let that fluidity be comforting tonight. You don't need to hold tightly to being you. Let identity soften at the edges. Let the question of who you are dissolve into the deeper mystery of simply being aware. Freedom in a determined world. Picture the moment before you make a choice. You're considering options, weighing possibilities. Then you decide, you choose, or do you? This is the ancient question of free will, and it runs deeper than most people realize. Consider this. Your choice emerged from your brain state. Your brain state was determined by prior causes, genetics, experiences, the exact configuration of neurons at that moment. Those causes were themselves determined by prior causes, stretching back through your entire history, back before you were born, back to the beginning of the universe. If every event has a prior cause and your choices are events, then your choices have prior causes. They couldn't have been otherwise. The feeling of choosing freely might be an illusion. The universe was always going to unfold this way. Philosopher Peter van Inwagen formalized this as the consequence argument. If the past is fixed, and the laws of nature are fixed, and your choices follow from past states plus natural laws, then your choices are fixed too. You couldn't have done otherwise. This feels wrong. You know you make choices. You deliberate, weigh options, decide. But the argument suggests this is all determined, that you're like a sophisticated machine, following its programming, convinced it's choosing freely. Some people respond, but what about quantum mechanics? Quantum events are random, not determined. Maybe our choices have quantum randomness in them. But randomness isn't freedom either. If your choice is random, it's not your choice, it's just chance. You can't take credit for what happens randomly. Freedom seems to require that your choices flow from you, from your character and reasons. But that makes them determined by who you are. And who you are was shaped by causes beyond your control. This seems to leave no room for freedom. Either your actions are determined by prior causes, or they're random. Either way, they're not truly yours in the deep sense freedom seems to require. Yet you keep choosing. You keep deliberating, caring about decisions, holding yourself responsible. Perhaps that's what freedom really is, not some metaphysical magic, but the experience of deliberation, the sense that your choices matter, the feeling of being the one who decides. As you settle into rest tonight, notice that you don't have to solve this ancient puzzle. Let it be unresolved. Let the question of freedom drift away. Paradoxically, perhaps the freest act is to stop trying to control, to stop trying to choose, to simply let yourself fall into sleep. Let go of agency tonight. You don't need to decide to rest. Just allow it to happen. Freedom might be found not in choosing, but in releasing the need to choose. If God knows, are you free? Imagine there exists a being who knows everything, past, present, and future. Every event that ever has or ever will occur is perfectly clear in this being's eternal awareness. If such a being exists, and if it knows what you'll choose tomorrow, is that choice truly free? Can you do otherwise than what God knows you'll do? This is the problem of divine foreknowledge, and medieval philosophers wrestled with it intensely. The argument seems simple. If God knows you'll choose chocolate tomorrow, you can't choose vanilla. If you could choose vanilla, God's knowledge would be wrong. But God can't be wrong. So your choice is already determined by what God knows. Some philosophers responded, perhaps God exists outside time. From eternity, God sees all moments at once, not as a prediction of the future, but as a direct observation of all events equally present. In this view, God's knowing doesn't determine your choice. It's more like watching you choose. But this doesn't quite solve it. Even if God observes timelessly, the fact remains. If God sees you choosing chocolate, you can't choose vanilla. The observation itself seems to fix what happens. Others suggested that maybe God knows possibilities rather than actualities, that God sees all the branches your future might take, without knowing which one you'll actually follow. But this seems to limit God's knowledge, making God less than omniscient. The puzzle reveals a deeper tension between two intuitions we want to keep, that we're free to choose, and that the future is somehow settled. If the future exists already, whether in God's knowledge or in the deterministic unfolding of physical law, then how can our choices be genuinely open? Perhaps the deepest response is simply to hold both, that from inside your experience, choices feel genuinely open, while from outside, whether God's view or physics' view, events unfold in a determined pattern. Both perspectives might be true simultaneously, neither complete without the other. As you drift toward sleep, let this puzzle be unresolved. You don't need to reconcile divine knowledge with human freedom tonight. Let the tension between determination and choice soften. Let the question float away. Perhaps in sleep, you'll experience something beyond both, a state where there's no choice because there's no chooser, where consciousness flows without agency, where you simply are without needing to decide what to be. Let that state begin now. You're not choosing to fall asleep. It's happening through you, not by you. Rest in that paradox. The self that isn't there. Picture yourself from 5 years ago. Different thoughts, different worries, even different cells in your body. Are you the same person? Now picture yourself from 20 years ago. Even more different. Memories you've forgotten. Beliefs you no longer hold. A body that's replaced nearly every atom. So what makes you, you? What connects these different stages of a life into one person? David Hume meditated on this question and arrived at a radical conclusion. When he looked inside himself, he never found a self, only a bundle of perceptions, thoughts, sensations, emotions, arising and passing. No unified thing that remained constant throughout, just a stream of experiences with no experiencer behind them. Buddhism reached a similar insight thousands of years earlier. Anatta, the doctrine of no self. Look closely at your experience and you find thoughts but no thinker, sensations but no sensor, experiences but no one having them. Modern neuroscience supports this view. There's no self-center in the brain, no single place where you live. Consciousness seems to be distributed, a process rather than a thing, an activity rather than an entity. Yet you feel like a unified self. You have a sense of being one person, continuous through time, the same you who went asleep last night and woke this morning. Some philosophers suggest the self is more like a story than a substance. You create a narrative connecting your experiences. This happened, then that, all part of my life. The story creates the illusion of continuity, of a unified protagonist moving through time. But if there's no stable self, what does that mean for responsibility? If the person who committed a crime 20 years ago is fundamentally different from the person being punished now, is punishment just? Perhaps it means taking the self less seriously, not denying it. The experience of being a self is real, but recognizing it as constructed, fluid, less solid than it appears. You're not a thing that has experiences. You're a process of experiencing, constantly changing, never quite the same twice. This might sound disturbing, but it can be liberating. If there's no fixed self, there's nothing you need to defend, nothing you need to prove, no identity to maintain. You can simply be this moment's experience, whatever it happens to be. As you drift towards sleep, notice how the sense of self already softens. You're not working to be you. You're not maintaining your identity. It's just happening, this flow of experiencing, with no one needing to hold it together. Let the self dissolve tonight. Let you become just a convention, a useful label for this stream of consciousness. And as the stream flows into sleep, let even that label go. Rest as pure experiencing, without anyone needing to experience it. The puzzle of persistence. Imagine someone with severe amnesia. They remember nothing before yesterday. No childhood memories, no sense of their history, no recognition of people they once loved. The past is completely gone. Are they still the same person? Most legal systems would say yes. The body is continuous. The biological organism persists. But psychologically, they're a stranger to their own past. So in what sense are they the same person? This is the puzzle of personal identity through memory loss, and it reveals how uncertain we are about what makes someone who they are. Consider Alzheimer's disease in its advanced stages. The person no longer recognizes their family, doesn't remember their life, has lost the character traits that defined them. Loved ones often say, they're not really there anymore. Yet the body remains, breathing, alive. If identity depends on psychological continuity, memories, character, sense of self, then severe dementia might mean the person no longer exists, even though their body continues. But this seems harsh, troubling. The person feels gone because we can no longer connect with them, but perhaps they're still there, just transformed beyond recognition. Or consider the opposite case. Someone undergoes a profound change, religious conversion, recovery from addiction, fundamental personality shift. They might say, I'm not the same person I was. And in a deep sense, they're right. The continuity of body and name remains, but psychologically they feel discontinuous with their past. So what grounds identity? Body, memory, character, some combination. Or perhaps there's no fact of the matter, just a useful convention we maintain for legal and social purposes. The puzzle becomes especially poignant with dementia because it asks, does the person deserve care because they're the same person we loved? Or do we care for them simply because they're a human being, regardless of identity? Perhaps the question itself is flawed. Perhaps identity isn't all or nothing. Perhaps it's a matter of degree, stronger when psychological connections are rich, weaker when they fade, but never completely present or absent. As you prepare for sleep, consider that you won't have perfect continuity with tomorrow's waking self. You won't remember this exact moment of falling asleep. The dreams you have tonight might feel discontinuous with waking life. Yet somehow, the thread continues. Let that thread be loose tonight. You don't need perfect continuity. Let memory fade. Let your sense of who you are become blurry, uncertain. In sleep, identity dissolves anyway. You might be anyone in your dreams or no one at all. Rest in that dissolution. The question of who you are can wait until morning, when everything's connected. Imagine pulling on one thread and discovering it's connected to everything else. Your choice to read this creates ripples, affecting your thoughts, your sleep, your tomorrow. Those effects create further effects, spreading outward in an endless web of causation. This is the problem of causal determinism, but approached gently, contemplatively, as a meditation on interconnection rather than a threat to freedom. Every event has causes. Your current state was caused by prior states. Those states had causes stretching back through your history, every choice you made, every person you met, every experience that shaped you. Those causes had causes of their own, extending back before you existed, through your parents' lives, through human history, through evolutionary time, back to the origin of the cosmos itself. You are not a separate thing making independent choices. You're a nexus point where countless causal chains converge, interact, and flow forward. Like a wave in the ocean, distinct, recognizable, but inseparable from the water that forms it. This could feel limiting. You're just an effect of prior causes, no different from a falling stone or a rising tide. But it could also feel liberating. You're not alone, not separate, not solely responsible for everything that happens. You're part of a vast, interconnected system. Consider how you arrived at this moment. Countless events had to unfold exactly as they did. Biological, historical, cosmic, to produce you here now, listening to these words. The precise configuration of atoms in the early universe determined, in some sense, that this moment would occur. Some find this frightening. No control, no freedom, just inevitable unfolding. Others find it peaceful, nothing to resist, nothing to regret, just the way things are flowing through you. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught not to fight what happens, but to align yourself with it. To want what is, rather than wanting what isn't. If everything is determined, then resistance is fighting reality itself. Acceptance becomes the path to peace. As you rest tonight, consider that even this moment, your settling into sleep, was determined by countless causes. Your tiredness, your decision to rest, your body's readiness for sleep, all of it flowing inevitably from what came before. Let that inevitability be comforting. You don't have to make sleep happen. It's already happening as it was always going to happen. The universe is unfolding through you, carrying you toward rest. Stop resisting. Stop trying to control. Just let the causal chain pull you gently forward into darkness, into dreams, into the renewal that was always coming. The randomness that isn't freedom. Deep within the quantum realm, something strange happens. Particles don't follow strict laws. They behave randomly, probabilistically. An electron might decay now, or it might not. There's no hidden cause determining which. It's genuinely random. Some thought this randomness might save free will. If the universe isn't fully determined, if quantum randomness exists, maybe our choices aren't predetermined either. But here's the puzzle. Is random the same as free? Imagine your choices were determined by quantum coin flips in your brain, completely random events tipping your decisions one way or another. Would that make you more free? Or would it mean your choices weren't really yours at all, just chance events happening inside you? True freedom seems to require that your choices flow from you, from your character, your values, your reasons. That they're not random accidents but expressions of who you are. Yet if they flow from who you are, they're determined by your character. And your character was shaped by genetics and experience, things beyond your control. This is what philosophers call the luck objection. If determinism is true, your choices are the inevitable result of prior causes. You're unlucky if those causes produce bad choices. But if indeterminism is true, your choices involve random chance. You're unlucky if chance makes you choose badly. Either way, you don't deserve full credit or blame. The puzzle seems to show that freedom is impossible. Either your choices have causes, determinism, or they don't, randomness. If they have causes, you didn't ultimately control them. If they don't have causes, they're not really your choices. There's no third option that saves freedom. Some philosophers suggest we need a different concept of freedom, one compatible with determinism. Maybe freedom isn't about being uncaused, but about your choices flowing from your own deliberation, your own values, even if those values were themselves shaped by causes. Others embrace the randomness, suggesting that unpredictability itself creates a kind of openness in reality. That even if individual quantum events are random, they might combine in ways that create genuine agency. But perhaps the deepest response is to stop worrying about whether freedom is real in some metaphysical sense. You experience yourself as making choices. That experience is real, even if the ultimate nature of causation remains mysterious. As you drift towards sleep, notice how control is already slipping away. You're not choosing when to fall asleep. It's happening or it isn't. You're not deciding what to dream. Dreams will arrive unbidden. Even the thoughts flowing through your mind right now aren't fully under your control. Let that loss of control be relief rather than threat. You don't need to be the uncaused cause of everything that happens. Just let yourself be carried by biology, by tiredness, by the natural rhythm of rest. Freedom might be found not in ultimate control, but in releasing the need for it. When you can't prove anything, picture yourself sitting comfortably right now, listening to these words. You see the space around you, feel your body hear sounds. The world feels solid, real, present. But here's a question that philosopher Descartes posed centuries ago. How do you know any of this is real? How do you prove you're not dreaming right now? How do you know you're not being perfectly deceived? Descartes imagined, just as a thought experiment, that a powerful being was creating all your experiences. That the room you're in, the body you feel, even the memories you have, all illusions created by this deceiver. This sounds paranoid, but Descartes wasn't being fearful. He was being philosophical, asking, what can we know with absolute, unshakable certainty? And he found something. Even if everything else was an illusion, one thing remained undeniable, that he was thinking, that he existed as a conscious being. I think, therefore I am. Not I have a body, that could be illusion. Not I see a world, that could be deception. But simply, I am aware, therefore I exist. Consciousness itself became the one certainty, the bedrock upon which all other knowledge had to rest. But this doesn't get us very far. You know you exist, but you can't prove anything else does. The external world, other people, even your own past, all could be elaborate illusions. You might be a brain in a vat fed false sensations. You might be dreaming a very long, very coherent dream. You might be the only thing that exists, creating the illusion of a world around you. This position, called solipsism, is logically unassailable. You cannot definitively prove it's false. Every attempt to prove the external world exists relies on assumptions that might themselves be part of the illusion. Yet you don't really believe you're alone, dreaming all of this. You live as if other people, the world, reality itself are genuine. Not because you've proven it, but because it's the only way to live. Perhaps this reveals something about knowledge itself. Not everything that matters can be proven. Some things, like the reality of the external world, the existence of other minds, we must accept on faith. Not religious faith, but pragmatic faith. Trust that allows us to function. As you drift toward sleep, you're moving toward a state where this question becomes less pressing. In dreams, you'll accept impossible things as real without questioning them. You'll interact with people who don't exist, visit places that aren't there, experience events that never happened, and it will all feel perfectly genuine. Maybe waking life is the same. Maybe we navigate a reality we can never fully prove, accepting it on faith because acceptance is what allows us to live. Let that uncertainty be gentle tonight. You don't need absolute proof that anything is real. Let skepticism dissolve. Let doubt transform into trust. And as consciousness fades, as the boundary between real and unreal blurs, let yourself slip into dreams without asking which is which. Why tomorrow remains uncertain. Imagine the sun has risen every morning of your life. 10,000 dawns, 20,000, 30,000, depending on your age. Every single day, without exception, the sun has appeared in the east. So tomorrow the sun will rise, obviously right. But here's what philosopher David Hume noticed. Logically, the past doesn't guarantee the future. Just because something has always happened doesn't mean it must happen again. This is the problem of induction, the foundation of all scientific reasoning, yet impossible to justify with certainty. Every time you drop a cup, it falls. Every time you release a ball, it drops downward. Gravity has never failed, so you trust that gravity will continue working tomorrow. But logically, all those past observations don't prove anything about the future. They just show what happened before. The universe could change its laws tomorrow. Physics could suddenly work differently. Nothing in logic prevents this. Your expectation that tomorrow will resemble today is based on habit, not logical necessity. This unsettles the entire scientific method. Science makes predictions based on patterns observed in the past. But if past observations don't logically guarantee future results, how is science justified? Some philosophers suggest we can't justify induction through logic. We simply assume the future will resemble the past because we must. It's a pragmatic faith, not a proven truth. Others argue that induction has worked so well for so long that this itself is evidence it will continue working. But this argument uses induction to justify induction, a circular reasoning that doesn't really solve the problem. Perhaps the deepest response is to recognize that certainty isn't always possible. We navigate the world with assumptions we can't prove. The sun will rise, gravity will work, the floor will hold us, not because we've proven these things, but because they've never failed us. As you settle into rest, notice how much you trust without proof. You trust your bed will support you through the night. You trust the air will remain breathable. You trust morning will come. None of this is logically guaranteed, yet you rest easy anyway. Let that trust deepen tonight. The future is uncertain in the strictest sense, but experience suggests continuity. The patterns that have held will likely hold again. And even if they don't, even if tomorrow brings something completely unexpected, that's tomorrow's concern. For now, rest in the gentle assumption that tomorrow will come, that sleep will restore you, that waking will follow darkness. Not because you've proven it, but because you trust the pattern. And that trust is enough to let yourself go. Living in a constructed reality. What if everything you experience, this room, this moment, your entire life, is a simulation running on some vast computer? What if you're a conscious program, experiencing a reality that's entirely digital? This is the simulation hypothesis, and it's more than science fiction. Some philosophers take it quite seriously. The argument goes like this. If civilizations can create realistic simulations, and if they create many simulations, then there would be far more simulated minds than real ones. Statistically, you're more likely to be in a simulation than in base reality. Think of it like this. One real civilization might create thousands of simulated worlds. Each of those simulated civilizations might create thousands more. The simulated realities would vastly outnumber the real one. But does it matter? If you're in a simulation but the simulation is perfect, completely indistinguishable from reality, does anything actually change? Your experiences would still be real experiences. Your relationships would still matter. Joy would still feel joyful, pain would still hurt. The only difference would be the substrate, digital instead of physical. But why would that matter? Some people find the simulation hypothesis disturbing. It makes reality feel cheap, constructed, arbitrary. But others find it oddly comforting. If we're in a simulation, perhaps death isn't final. Perhaps consciousness could be transferred, backed up, continued in different simulations. The hypothesis also connects to ancient philosophical ideas. Plato believed our world was a shadow of a higher reality. Buddhist philosophy suggests ordinary reality is Maya, illusion or appearance hiding deeper truth. Perhaps the simulation hypothesis is just a modern, technological version of these old intuitions. But here's what remains constant regardless: your experience itself. Whether base reality or simulation, whether physical or digital, you are aware. You experience moments. You have consciousness. That inner dimension doesn't depend on what the underlying substrate is made of. As you drift towards sleep, consider that you're already moving between realities. Waking life will fade. Dream life will arise. Different rules, different physics, different logic, yet your consciousness will flow continuously through both. Perhaps this reveals something profound. You are not your circumstances, not your world, not even your body. You are the experiencing itself, the awareness that witnesses whatever reality presents. Let that awareness rest now. Let it matter less whether this is base reality or simulation. You're here, you're experiencing, and for tonight, that's all that matters. The substrate beneath experience can remain mysterious. The experience itself is enough. If all possibilities are real, imagine every choice you didn't make still happened, just in a different universe. Every path you didn't take was taken by another version of you, in another world just as real as this one. This is modal realism, proposed by philosopher David Lewis. Not just a thought experiment, but a serious metaphysical claim. All possible worlds actually exist. In one world, you made different choices at every turning point. In another, you were never born. In yet another, the laws of physics are different. History unfolded another way. Reality has a completely different structure. Lewis argued this wasn't poetry or speculation. It was the best way to make sense of possibility and necessity. When we say something could have happened, we mean it happened in some possible world. When we say something must be true, we mean it's true in all possible worlds. But accepting this literally means accepting that somewhere, somewhen, every possible variation of reality exists. Not just possible, but actual, real, happening. It sounds insane. The multiplication of reality to infinity and beyond. Yet Lewis argued it solved more problems than it created. It explained modality, causation, probability, all in one elegant framework. Most philosophers reject modal realism. Too ontologically extravagant, they say. Too hard to believe. But the alternative might be equally strange. That possibility is somehow real but not actual. That there are true facts about what could have been, even though those things don't exist anywhere. For our purposes tonight, modal realism offers an odd comfort. Every regret you carry, every choice you wish you'd made differently, was made differently by another you in another world. You're living one path, but all paths are being traveled. Nothing was truly lost. Every possibility is preserved somewhere in the infinite landscape of reality. This you chose rest tonight, but another you is working late, another is traveling, another made completely different life choices decades ago. Perhaps this is liberating. The weight of your particular path becomes lighter when you realize all paths exist. You're not missing out, you're just experiencing one branch of an infinite tree. As you settle into sleep, let yourself imagine the vast network of possible worlds. In some of them, different versions of you are just waking up. In others, you don't exist at all. In this one, this particular you is preparing for rest. Let the infinity of it all wash over you. You are not the only you, carrying the burden of being your only chance. You're one instance of consciousness among infinite instances, experiencing one possibility among infinite possibilities. Rest easy tonight. Somewhere in some possible world, you're already asleep. Let that possibility become actual here, now, in this world. The loneliness of consciousness. You've spent your entire life inside one consciousness, yours. You've never experienced a single moment from any other perspective. Every memory, every sensation, every thought you've ever had occurred in the same location, your own awareness. This is the problem of other minds approached from a different angle, not just whether other minds exist, but the profound isolation of being trapped inside your own. You can describe your experiences to others. You can say, I feel sad, or I see blue, or that was beautiful. But you can never transfer the actual experience. The exact quality of your sadness, your blue, your sense of beauty remains locked inside you, inaccessible to anyone else. Even in the deepest intimacy, you remain separate. The person who loves you most can never directly experience what it's like to be you. They can empathize, imagine, infer, but they can never actually feel your feelings, think your thoughts, see through your eyes. This creates a curious kind of loneliness. Each of us is a universe of experience, complete and vivid, but eternally private. Like stars separated by vast darkness, we can shine toward each other, but we cannot merge. Language becomes a bridge, imperfect but precious. When you share an experience in words and someone responds, "I know exactly how you feel," they don't, not exactly. But they've had similar experiences in their own consciousness, and they're offering that similarity as connection. Art reaches across this gap too. A painting, a song, a poem. These are attempts to evoke in another consciousness something resembling what the artist experienced. Not identical, never perfectly shared, but resonant. Two separate inner worlds vibrating in harmony. Perhaps this isolation is why connection feels so profound when it happens, why being truly understood moves us deeply, why moments of shared laughter, shared silence, shared presence matter so much. They're small victories over the fundamental separateness of consciousness. But perhaps there's another way to think about this. Maybe you've never been as separate as you feel. Every person you've ever interacted with has shaped your consciousness. Every conversation, every relationship, every exchange has left traces in your mind. You carry other people inside you, not literally, but as influences, memories, parts of your inner landscape. And they carry you inside them. Your words, your presence, your impact on their lives, all of it exists as patterns in their consciousness. In this way, consciousnesses interpenetrate, influence each other, even though they can never fully merge. As you drift towards sleep, let the boundaries soften. Let the sense of being utterly separate, utterly alone in your consciousness dissolve slightly. Perhaps in dreams, you'll be less isolated, experiencing from perspectives that aren't quite yours, inhabiting roles that blur the line between self and other. Let that blurring begin now. You are alone in your consciousness, yes, but you're alone the way islands are alone, separate, distinct, yet all part of the same ocean floor, all surrounded by the same water. Rest in that paradoxical solitude that's also connection. Why anything exists at all. Take a breath and consider the most basic fact imaginable. Something exists, not nothing but something. The universe, reality, being itself. Why? This is philosophy's deepest question, and it has no answer, not because we haven't thought hard enough, but because it might be unanswerable in principle. Everything in your experience has an explanation. The chair exists because someone made it. The room exists because someone built it. You exist because your parents conceived you. But trace any chain of explanation far enough and you hit a wall. Why does anything exist at all? Even if you say God created everything, the question just moves. Why does God exist? Saying God exists necessarily, or God is self-caused, just labels the mystery. It doesn't explain it. The universe might have existed forever with no beginning, or it might have begun in the Big Bang. Either way, why? Why something rather than nothing? Why this universe with these laws of physics rather than different laws, or no laws at all, or no universe whatsoever? Nothing seems like it should be simpler than something. Nothingness requires no explanation, no cause, no beginning. It's the default state, or so our intuition suggests. Existence is what needs explaining. But maybe our intuition is wrong. Maybe nothingness is actually impossible. Maybe nothing is an incoherent concept, that in trying to imagine it, we're actually imagining something, darkness, emptiness, void, rather than nothing. Or perhaps existence is simply brute fact, the ultimate unexplained explainer, the foundation upon which all other explanations rest, but which itself rests on nothing. It just is. Philosopher Leibniz called this the principle of sufficient reason. Everything must have an explanation. But the existence of the universe itself seems to violate this principle. Its explanation bottoms out in mystery. Some find this disturbing, the thought that at the foundation of everything is inexplicable brute fact. Others find it freeing. Not everything needs explanation. Some facts are fundamental, basic, requiring no justification beyond themselves. As you settle into rest, notice the sheer miracle that you exist, that anything exists, that there's a universe to sleep in, a body to rest in, consciousness to dissolve into dreams. You don't need to understand why existence exists. You only need to be existence, experiencing itself, preparing now to release into darkness. Let the why dissolve. Let the need for ultimate explanation fade. Some questions are too big for answers, but they're not too big to rest with. Let this deepest mystery be the softest pillow, the knowledge that you exist, impossibly, gratuitously, without ultimate reason. And that's enough. Being is enough. Rest in being. The question of categories. Picture three red things: a fire truck, a tomato, a sunset. Each is different, different substance, different context, different purpose. Yet they share something: redness. But what is this redness they share? Does it exist independently of the red things, or only in them? This is the problem of universals, and philosophers have argued about it for millennia. Plato believed that redness exists in an eternal realm of forms, a perfect, abstract redness that all red things participate in. The things in our world are imperfect copies of this ideal redness. Others said this was nonsense. Only individual red things exist. Redness is just a word we use, a convenience, not a real entity. There are red apples and red cars, but no redness itself hovering in some abstract realm. But if redness doesn't exist, how can red things be similar? How can the word red apply to so many different objects? There must be something shared, something common, even if it's not a platonic form. The puzzle extends to every category we use. Triangle, beauty, justice, kindness. Are these real things existing somewhere, or just useful labels we apply to particular instances? Think about numbers. Does the number 3 exist? Not 3 apples or 3 cats, but threeness itself. Mathematicians discover truths about numbers that seem to exist independently of human minds. Yet numbers have no physical location, no material substance. Perhaps universals exist in minds. They're concepts we create to organize experience. But then why do people in different cultures, speaking different languages, develop similar categories? Why does everyone recognize redness, even if they call it by different names? The question might be unanswerable, or perhaps it reveals that our categories, real and unreal, are too simple. Maybe universals are real in a different way than physical objects. Maybe existence itself comes in kinds. As you drift toward sleep, notice how categories themselves start to blur. Waking and sleeping aren't sharp divisions but gradual transitions. Thoughts and dreams mix at the edges. The clear boundaries of daytime consciousness soften into ambiguity. Let the categories dissolve tonight. You don't need to know if redness exists independently. Let the question float away. Rest in the space before nomming, before categories, before the mind divided the world into types and kinds. Thinking about what isn't there. How can you think about Pegasus? The winged horse doesn't exist, never existed, never will exist. Yet right now you can picture it clearly: white wings, powerful body, soaring through clouds. But if Pegasus doesn't exist, what are you thinking about? How can your mind refer to nothing? This is the problem of empty names, and it reveals something strange about thought and reference. When you think about your friend, your thought refers to an actual person. When you think about Paris, your thought refers to a real city. Reference seems straightforward. Thoughts connect to things in the world. But Pegasus isn't in the world. Neither is Sherlock Holmes or Zeus or unicorns. Yet we think about them, talk about them, tell stories about them. Our thoughts seem to refer to something, even when that something doesn't exist. Philosopher Bertrand Russell suggested that sentences about non-existent things are actually disguised descriptions. Pegasus has wings really means there exists something that is a winged horse. But there doesn't exist such a thing, so the sentence is false. Problem solved. Others, like Meinong, argued that non-existent objects have a kind of being anyway. They subsist in a realm of possibility, even if they don't exist in reality. When you think of Pegasus, you're thinking of a real possible, something that could exist even if it doesn't. Perhaps what this reveals is that minds can create representations of things that never were and never will be. Imagination transcends reality. Thought can extend beyond what exists into what might exist, what's conceivable, what's purely fictional. As you settle into rest, notice how your mind already moves toward the non-existent. Memories aren't the past itself. They're reconstructions, representations. Plans aren't the future. They're imagined possibilities. Even your sense of self might be partly fictional, a story you tell rather than a thing you are. And in sleep, you'll experience things that don't exist at all. Dream people, dream places, dream events, all vivid, all real seeming in the moment, all purely constructed. Let your mind move freely now between the real and unreal. Let imagination blur with perception. Let the distinction between what is and what isn't soften. In dreams, Pegasus can fly and you can fly with it. The non-existent becomes experienced. Rest in the freedom of consciousness to think beyond reality, to imagine what isn't, to experience the impossible. Let thought wander into strange territories where being and non-being intertwine. When time refuses to stay, does the past still exist? Is it out there somewhere just as real as the present moment? Or is only now real, with past and future being somehow less than fully actual? This is the question of time's reality, and how you answer shapes everything else. Some philosophers defend presentism. Only the present moment exists. The past existed, it was real when it was present, but it's gone now. The future doesn't exist yet. Reality is just this moment, this thin slice of now, continuously moving forward. But this creates puzzles. How can the past affect the present if it doesn't exist? How can you remember something that's no longer real? How can there be facts about what happened if the past isn't there anymore? Others embrace eternalism. All moments in time exist equally. Past, present, future, all are equally real. You only experience the present, but that's like being in one location and thinking only that location is real. The past is as real as New York is when you're in Paris. Just because you're not there doesn't mean it doesn't exist. If eternalism is true, your entire life exists all at once, like a four-dimensional object stretching through time. Your birth, your death, this moment, all equally real, all equally present in the block universe. You only perceive yourself as moving through time, but really all moments exist timelessly. Some find this comforting. Nothing is truly lost. Every moment you've ever loved still exists, somewhere in time. Every person you've lost is still living their moments, even if you've moved beyond them. Others find it disturbing. The future is already there, already determined, already fixed. Your whole life might already exist, complete, with no genuine openness about what comes next. A middle view suggests the past is real, the future isn't, and the present is where reality grows. Like a growing block, time extends forward, adding new moments to what already exists. But perhaps the deepest insight is simpler. Time might not be what it seems. Your experience of moving through time, of past becoming present becoming future, might be as much a construction of consciousness as a feature of reality. As you drift towards sleep, notice how time already becomes fluid. Minutes feel like hours, or hours like minutes. Past memories mix with present sensations. The future starts to include dream events that haven't happened yet. Let time be uncertain tonight. Let past, present, and future blur together. In sleep, you'll experience time running backward, jumping forward, looping strangely. The rigid structure of waking time will dissolve. Rest in temporal ambiguity. You don't need to know if the past still exists. Just let yourself exist, timelessly, in this moment that's becoming sleep. The machine that offers perfect happiness. Imagine a device that could give you any experience you wanted. Perfect happiness, endless pleasure, meaningful relationships, great achievements, all indistinguishable from reality. You'd never know you were in the machine. You'd simply experience a perfect life. Would you plug in? This is philosopher Robert Nozick's experience machine, and most people say no. But why? If all that matters is how we feel, if happiness is the goal, why refuse guaranteed bliss? Perhaps because we care about more than just experience. We want our relationships to be real, not simulated. We want our achievements to actually happen, not just feel like they happened. We want truth, not just pleasant illusion. The experience machine reveals something about value. We don't just want to feel happy. We want to actually be living, actually connecting, actually doing things that matter. Experience isn't everything. Reality matters too. But here's a deeper question. How do you know you're not already in the machine? How would you tell the difference between genuine reality and a perfect simulation? If the machine could create this exact moment, this exact feeling of uncertainty, this exact thought process, what makes you think you're outside it? Perhaps what matters isn't whether you're in the machine, but what you do with the experiences you have. Real or simulated, your joys feel joyful, your connections feel meaningful, your life feels like it matters. Some philosophers suggest we're already in a kind of experience machine, consciousness itself. Your brain creates all your experiences, filtering and constructing reality before presenting it to awareness. You never touch reality directly. You only experience your brain's representation of it. If that's true, then the distinction between real experience and simulated experience might be less clear than it seems. Every experience is mediated, constructed, represented. Direct access to reality might be impossible. As you drift towards sleep, consider that you're about to enter your own experience machine. Dreams will create entire worlds complete with people, places, events, all constructed by your sleeping brain. You'll experience emotions, have conversations, live through scenarios, all while lying still. And in the morning you'll wake and call it just a dream. But while dreaming, it felt real. The experiences were genuine, even if the content was fictional. Let yourself enter the dream machine now. Let go of the need for experiences to correspond to external reality. Let consciousness create whatever it creates. Real or simulated, experienced is experienced. Rest in the mystery of whether any experience is more real than any other. And let sleep's natural illusions carry you into whatever perfect or imperfect experiences await in dreams. When intuition deceives. Philosophy is built on thought experiments. Imagine you're in a runaway trolley. Imagine your brain in a vat. Imagine a perfect copy of yourself. These scenarios help us test our intuitions about morality, knowledge, identity. But here's an unsettling question. Are thought experiments reliable guides to truth? Or do they just reveal our biases, our cognitive limitations, our confused intuitions? Consider the trolley problem. Most people say it's acceptable to divert a trolley to kill one person instead of 5, but they say it's wrong to push someone in front of the trolley to save 5. Same numbers, same outcome, but our intuitions pull in opposite directions. Maybe this reveals a deep truth about ethics, that there's a morally relevant difference between acting and allowing, between direct harm and indirect harm. Or maybe it just reveals that our intuitions are inconsistent, shaped by emotion rather than logic. The same uncertainty infects all philosophical thought experiments. When we imagine philosophical zombies, are we discovering something about consciousness? Or just noticing that we can imagine the behavior without the experience? Does conceivability track possibility, or just the limits of our imagination? Perhaps thought experiments work best not as proofs but as provocations. They make us think harder, question assumptions, explore conceptual space, but they can't deliver certainty. Some philosophers worry that we've built elaborate theories on foundations of sand, on intuitions that shift with context, that vary between people, that might simply be wrong. But maybe that's not a failing. Maybe philosophy isn't supposed to deliver certainty. Maybe it's supposed to disturb our certainties, reveal our confusions, show us how much we don't know. As you settle into rest, notice how thought experiments fade in importance. The trolley problem doesn't matter when you're falling asleep. Philosophical zombies can't disturb you when consciousness is dissolving anyway. Let the thought experiments drift away. Let intuitions about ethics, knowledge, identity become less pressing. Philosophy is for waking hours. Sleep requires releasing the need to figure things out. Let your mind stop testing scenarios. Stop imagining possibilities. Stop probing intuitions. Just rest in immediate experience without thought experiments, without philosophical puzzles, without the need to test anything against anything else. The experiments can wait until morning. For now, just be. Why explanation ends in mystery. Every explanation rests on something unexplained. You ask why something happened and someone gives a reason, but you can ask why that reason is true, and why that further reason is true. Eventually, the chain has to end somewhere. Either you hit an infinite regress, explanations all the way down, never reaching a foundation, or you hit an arbitrary stopping point, something accepted without explanation, brute fact, foundation that itself has no foundation. This is the problem of infinite regress, and it appears everywhere in philosophy. Why does anything exist? Because of the Big Bang. Why did the Big Bang happen? Because of quantum fluctuations. Why do quantum fluctuations occur? Because of the laws of physics. Why those laws? The questions never stop. Some people say God is the ultimate explanation. But why does God exist? Saying God is self-explaining or God necessarily exists just labels the mystery. It doesn't solve it. Others accept that explanation bottoms out in brute facts. The universe exists because it does. The laws of physics are what they are for no deeper reason. Existence itself is the unexplained explainer. But this feels unsatisfying. We want ultimate explanations, final answers, foundations that need no justification. Yet logic suggests such foundations might be impossible. Perhaps the deepest wisdom is accepting that mystery is fundamental. Not everything can be explained. Some things just are. The search for complete understanding might be inherently impossible. This applies to consciousness too. Why is there something it's like to be you? Why does subjective experience exist? You can trace neural correlates, map brain activity, describe mechanisms. But at some point, the explanation hits bedrock. Experience happens because it does. The hard problem might have no solution because it's asking for an explanation that doesn't exist. As you drift towards sleep, let the need for ultimate explanation fade. Let questions rest unanswered. Let the regress stop wherever it naturally stops without demanding one more step back. Some mysteries don't need solving. Some questions don't need answers. Some foundations are simply given, brute facts of reality that exist without justification. Rest in unexplained being tonight. You exist. Consciousness exists. Experience happens. Why? The question can wait. Let it dissolve into the deeper acceptance that not everything needs explaining. Let the infinite regress end here now in simple presence. No more why, just this, just being, just awareness settling into sleep. If nothing can be known, imagine doubting everything, not just obvious claims but the foundations of knowledge itself, logic, mathematics, even your own existence. Can you doubt all of it? Skepticism pushed to its limit suggests you can. Every belief you hold might be mistaken. Every sensation might be illusion. Every inference might be flawed. Absolute certainty might be impossible. But here's the paradox. The The skeptic claims to know that nothing can be known. They're certain that certainty is impossible. The position undermines itself. Yet the challenge of skepticism remains. How can you escape the possibility that everything you believe is wrong, that all your experiences are deceptive, that reality is nothing like it seems? Perhaps you can't escape it completely. Perhaps some degree of doubt is always rationally justified, but perhaps that's fine. Perhaps knowledge doesn't require certainty. Perhaps reasonable belief is enough. You don't know with absolute certainty that you're not dreaming right now, but you have excellent reasons to believe you're awake. The coherence of experience, the continuity of memory, the reliability of perception, all support the belief that this is waking life. Knowledge might be more like a web than a foundation. No single belief is absolutely certain, but they support each other, creating a structure that's stable even if no individual thread is unbreakable. Skepticism serves a purpose. It keeps us humble, prevents dogmatism, reminds us that certainty is rare. But taken to extremes, it becomes paralysis. You can't live as a complete skeptic. You'd never leave your house, never trust anyone, never believe anything. Perhaps the wisdom is holding both, acknowledging uncertainty while living with confidence, knowing that you might be wrong while still making choices, holding beliefs, navigating the world. As you prepare for sleep, notice how skepticism naturally dissolves. You don't question whether the bed will support you. You don't doubt that sleep will refresh you. You simply trust pragmatically without proof. Let that trust extend now. You don't need certainty about anything. Just let yourself rest in reasonable belief, in practical faith, in the acceptance that absolute knowledge might be impossible but life continues anyway. Doubt can wait until morning. For now, trust. Trust your body to sleep. Trust morning to come. Trust that not knowing everything is perfectly fine. Rest in uncertainty made peaceful. Why we ask questions without answers. You've spent hours now with mysteries that have no solutions. Problems philosophers have wrestled with for millennia without resolution. Questions that might be fundamentally unanswerable. So why pursue philosophy at all? If it doesn't solve problems, doesn't make you happier, doesn't offer practical guidance, what's the point? Perhaps the point is precisely that it solves nothing, that it keeps questions open rather than closing them with false certainty, that it preserves wonder in the face of mystery. Philosophy doesn't tell you what to believe. It shows you how many different things might be true. It reveals the complexity beneath simple questions. It demonstrates that certainty is rarer than we assume. This might sound like failure. We want answers, solutions, clarity. Philosophy offers doubt, complexity, ongoing inquiry. But perhaps that's exactly what human beings need. Not more certainty, but more appreciation for mystery. Not answers that close inquiry, but questions that keep it alive. Consider what you've encountered tonight. Consciousness that can't be explained, identity that can't be pinned down, freedom that might be illusion, reality that might be simulation. None of it resolved, all of it still mysterious. Yet something happened. Your mind expanded slightly. The world became stranger, richer, more complex than it seemed. Certainties you didn't know you held were gently questioned. Assumptions became visible. This is what philosophy does. Not solve but reveal. Not answer but deepen. Not close inquiry but open it wider. And there's intrinsic value in this. Not every activity needs practical payoff. Some things are worth doing simply because humans are the kind of beings who ask questions, who wonder, who can't help but pursue understanding even when it's not achievable. Philosophy justifies itself through acceptance of mystery, through the recognition that some questions are more important than their answers, through the celebration of inquiry itself. As you finally let yourself drift into sleep, consider that you've been doing something fundamentally human tonight. Asking why, how, what if, following questions into darkness, sitting with uncertainty. And now you can release it all. The questions, the puzzles, the mysteries, let them go. They'll be there tomorrow if you want them. But for now, let consciousness dissolve into sleep without needing to understand itself. Let the last question be, why does anything need to be solved? Why can't mystery simply exist, appreciated rather than conquered? Rest in the not knowing. Rest in the questions without answers. Rest in the beautiful, impossible, inexplicable fact that you exist, aware, experiencing, still capable of wonder. And let wonder itself be enough. Let sleep come. Let consciousness transform into dreams. Let philosophy dissolve into the deeper wisdom of simply being. No more questions now. Just rest. Just peace. Just the gentle acceptance that some things will always remain mysterious, and that's perfectly, beautifully fine. Sleep well.